All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. I'm Peter Orullian. As a reminder, when I was approached to do this show for Amazon and for Twitch, I kind of told them I'd do it, but I wanted to be able to do it as something different. I'm not a radio personality. I'm not a journalist. I wanted to have conversations with artists that I think are doing unique work, important work that deserves a broader audience. And so my efforts here to dimensionalize these people so that they garner more following and more people hear their music and understand, I think, the ways they're pushing the genre forward and enrich the genre because of their participation in it. And so that's why I call it Breaking Absolutes, trying to break down some of the stereotypes and the things that confine the music in these particular artists. And so today I get to talk to Jeff Scott Soto. A lot of you, I'm sure, will be familiar with him, but maybe less familiar with the depth of his work and the long history he has. And so we can't possibly, by the way, cover it all. But we're going to cover as much of it as we can. But before we do that, let me just set this up a little bit so we all understand who we're talking to here. Jeff's got just a huge number of solo records as well as, and there's a distinction between that and his Soto work, which we'll talk to him about. But he's also been very active in live recordings. He fronted the band Talisman, which many of you will remember with fondness. Bass player in my own group was just fawning over this last night when we were having dinner, because she's from Sweden, so she remembers Talisman. He was on the first two Yngwie records, which we'll touch on. He sang for a time with Journey. He sings with TSO and has been doing that for, I think, roughly 12 years. He's the vocalist in the group W.E.T, which is one I was lesser familiar with, but the music is so good. So we want to talk about that. And folks recently will know him from Sons of Apollo. And we're going to talk about that. There is an enormous list of groups that you would know, a name recognition as you hear them, that he has collaborated on or participated in backing vocals. And we won't name them all, but just a few sparklers there. He's recorded with Takara, Lita Ford, Steel Heart, House of Lords, Striper, Saigon Kick. He was on the Rockstar group with Zakk Wylde and Jeff Pilson and Jason Bonham. The point in me articulating these is for you to start to see the sort of association with sort of luminaries in the industry that call on Jeff for his vocal talent, whether it's to front the band or to participate in a project. And for me, that's always a hallmark of a great vocalist, because they're the ones that are getting these kinds of calls. And we can't cover them all, but we'll talk about some of them. There are, he's been on a couple of the TSO records, and those records have had chart positions. And of course, the music is great, and there's a lot of talent there. But it's another place where I think we need to acknowledge the fact that Jeff got the call to be a part of those recordings by virtue of his vocal gift. So I'll point pointers so you can go and look at some of this work. But he's participated in records that have hit all kinds of chart positions, and I think we're going to even see on his wall some nods to that. I could go on, but I better not. I better bring him on so we can just have the conversation. Jeff, welcome. There you are.
Hey, what's happening?
How you doing?
Dude, what an my God! You with an intro like that, you'd think I'd be living in some kind of secluded house on a hill somewhere, and I wouldn't even have internet to be able to do something like this. Yeah, it's a charmed life of being able to do what I've always dreamed of doing as an artist, as a singer, as a writer, producer, all of the above. But it truly is. It still is a work in progress. It's like you were announcing all these different things that I've done in my life and my career. There's still a whole world of people who have no idea who I am.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. If you're a musician in rock or metal, we know you 100%. And there's a lot of fans that know you. And some of them know you in isolation. They know you because you're with TSO and they love when you come out and sing there. Or they know Sons of Apollo more recently. But you've been on the scene a long time. And I like a bandmate or a collab. Well, I guess bandmate. You've worked with Joel Hoekstra many times, and we had him on the show. And I described him as a journeyman, and I mean that with affection, because you have a work ethic that you can kind of start to see in just some of my preamble. You continue to work. And so as much as there's stuff before, like you have so much ahead of you. And you continue to work and do new things. And it's the reason I wanted to have you on the show is I love the stuff from yesterday, but you were part of yesterday, but you're part of tomorrow. And so, yes, you are, I'm hoping we're going to introduce a lot more people to you and your voice as a consequence of this conversation.
Well, part of what you're kind of setting up there is it's difficult for me to say no. That's probably a good 80% of what I'm doing and what I've done. Even I was just discussing earlier with a friend, my upcoming schedule, it truly is insane based on the fact that I'm in the middle of moving, but I also am working on my next solo album that has to be done and delivered by the middle of October. Now we're at the middle of August almost, so I literally have 2 months left, and we just started writing this stuff last week. So we're well, the music's there, but I still got to write my melodies and lyrics, and I literally was one of the reasons I'm even late today is because I was in the middle of writing something I got to sing later on today while I go back in the garage and pack some boxes and drop it off at the new house. So between that, I literally moving into the new place. 2 days later, I'm on a plane to Bulgaria. I've got a show there. I've got a show in Ukraine. I've got a show in Kosovo. I come back. I'm here. I got to knock out some more vocals in the studio, my new studio as it's set up while I'm away. And then I got to leave the week after for another show, back for more singing, back on the road. I'm back and forth pretty much until I leave for TSO in November.
Yeah.
So everything's just piled up so crazily that it's even difficult, even when I write it down and I've got a chart in front of me. You're doing this today. It's impossible to keep track of everything.
Well, I was about to ask you like what you've been doing during COVID, but it sounds like your schedule has not changed a ton. You've had to continue to be busy.
Oh, absolutely. I took on way more sessions than I ever have in my life, and part of that is I have a living to keep. I have an upkeep. I have a house to pay, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, the music was my therapy. The music was my kind of forgetting what was going on in the world, forgetting the fact that I can't leave the house, that I can't perform, that I can't do what we normally have been doing all our lives.
Yeah.
So I found the outlet of just recording and creating. And my God, there's probably about 7 or 8 albums, not even the ones that I did for release, of worth of material that I've done in the past year. Not that I'm doing it for the sake of trying to capitalize on it. It really has just turned into accepting sessions and doing things I normally wouldn't even have time for. But because I had the time, I was able to say yes to a lot more people and do a lot more collaborations.
Yeah. I mean, it was a question I was going to ask, which is how do you manage it? Because as busy as you've been in COVID, your career suggests, as we look back, and we'll get into it here in a second, your career suggests that you have this kind of ongoing schedule, because a lot of these media projects that you've been in overlap. It's not like it's all linear. Yeah. So you're it seems like you bounce around a lot because you have a lot of different professional associations that are ongoing.
I am lucky that way, and I'm humbled by the fact that it's 37 years of doing this for a living, that I'm able to continue doing it. There's still an audience that wants to hear me do it, and it truly is. It's a testament to hard work. It's a testament to the validation that I've been able to receive the past almost 4 decades out there. But in the end, it's what I love, and I'm just so humbled by the fact that I get to continue doing this for a living. There's so many times, especially in the very beginning, when an artist is trying to find their legs, trying to find their way in this business, they say it's too much. It's too much competition. I'm just a small fish in a big sea, and I never took that as a way out. I never took that as a kind of a breakdown of giving up. Yeah. To me, I looked at it as a reason to continue going. I always reach for that brass ring, and although I may never get it, I may never achieve it, at least I have the body of work that gives me and allows me to continue doing what I'm doing.
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, the benchmark of success as a musician is being able to continue doing it as a profession. I mean, there is, of course, the glamour and the romantic
Absolutely.
notion of the people who make, gazillions of dollars. And there's no doubt there's bands and artists at that level. But there's a sea of musicians who have to continue to work other kinds of jobs to support the music they do. So as far as I'm concerned, you're a banner success as a musician.
Well, I thank you. I have different benchmarks that go far beyond the financial rewards or the popularity. And I mean, everything from validation from my peers, everything from validation from my heroes, my musical heroes that I used to love or had on my wall, and now are considered my friends. You know, all of the above. Even when somebody says your music has helped me through some difficult times, that to me is the benchmark of success and being accepted, more so than how much money did I make off that last album or tour. And again, music is a therapy for me and for a lot of people. It's something we all need. It's something we all desire and want. It's not something anybody in any walk of life pushes away from their lives. Everybody has music in their lives in some way, shape, or form. And for me, it's served as a career, and it's served as being able to support my family, but it's also served as something that kind of keeps me ticking.
Yeah. I've heard that from other musicians. I usually hear that from people for whom music is it's a lifestyle. It's not a hobby.
Yeah, I would have given it up a long time ago if it were just a hobby. Trust me.
So I read that when you were a kid, you also, and I wanted to see if you continue to do this, you did play some instruments like trumpet and keys. Is that still something you do at all, or you just don't have time for that anymore?
Trumpet, no. Keys, yes. Keys, obviously keys are more instrumental on writing songs, especially pop or rock songs. Trumpet, not so much. I did trumpet because I was, the music I listened to, especially when I was younger, I wasn't into rock at all. I didn't get into rock. One of the reasons I probably stopped playing trumpet is because that's when I finally got into rock. But before that, I was into pop and bands and things that had horn sections. I loved, my older brother was always a drummer and percussionist in the school bands. And I wanted to do what he was doing. I wanted to be a part of what he was doing. So, okay, what do I want to play? Saxophone looks way too complicated. I'm not a big horn instrument guy like a tuba or trombone or anything like that. So I ended up playing the trumpet, and it was a blast, first of all, learning how to play trumpet. And I loved doing it, and I excelled faster than anybody expected. But the main thing I got out of playing trumpet, it's kind of the same thing. Most people who know Ronnie James Dio, he was a trumpet player. You learn breath and wind control from playing the trumpet that is actually very useful later as a singer. And that's probably one of the best things I took away from playing the trumpet.
That's a great segue too, because obviously what you're most known for by a long shot is your voice. And there's a quality to your voice that's really unique, even in this strata of rock vocalists who use that grit and have the range. There's a certain soulfulness, a certain fullness in your notes, even when you're in a higher register, that can't be said of many of your peers. And I wanted to ask, is that a consequence of any sort of vocal training, or is that like a blessing, like a biological blessing that you have?
It's all influence and inspiration, man. It really comes down to every singer on the planet is basically just giving out, they're just singing and putting out what they were influenced by. I was influenced, as I said earlier, by mostly R&B and soul music, pretty much the first 15, 16 years of my life. When I finally got into rock, I hated rock. I couldn't stand, and I'll say this now because I can also reverse it. I can say the opposite of it. I hated bands like Van Halen and Ted Nugent and Cheap Trick and Kiss. I couldn't stand that because I came from such a soulful R&B background. Now, that being said, when a band like Toto came along, you could hear those hard rock crunchy guitars, but that singer, Bobby Kimball, had such a white soul influence. You could tell Steve Perry had that same Motown influence. You could tell Lou Gramm came from that same world. Yeah. All the singers that were now putting me into, kind of drawing me into rock that I loved, they just had that R&B influence, that swagger that was now mixed in with the rock. You could say the same thing about Mick Jagger. You could say the same thing about Robert Plant. But to me, I didn't hear that from those singers. So those singers and those bands were not in my wheelhouse whatsoever. But once I started delving into rock, then I started opening my mind and started realizing why and what the bands like Kiss and Ted Nugent and Cheap Trick and all the bands that I pushed away for so long, what they had to offer. And then I finally opened my eyes and opened my ears, and everything expanded from that point onward. So as I was an R&B soul bass that went into a kind of more of a soulful rock bass, I ended up even following it heavier to the Saxons and the Judas Priests and the Iron Maidens of the world. And that's when I finally started accepting all facets of music, because I realized that it's all going to be influential. At some point of my life, I'm going to need to refer to all of it. And as I'm pointing at these gold record and still platinum records on the wall,
Yeah.
TSO, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, is a testament to all these different styles that rounded up exactly where I'm at in my life. Yeah. The fact that I was able to draw from that soulful past that went into that rock middle part of my life, and then it all came together in one big melting pot of influence.
Yeah. It's really, really fascinating to hear you talk about that, because there is this uniqueness in your voice, this sort of soulfulness, and to hear some of the influence and how you then are sort of naturally and organically applying that to your vocals. And there's some examples that I want to point to later, but part of it is I wanted to take the opportunity to compliment you on it, because it's a treat to get to hear you sing, because of this quality in your voice. And I mean, same could be said about a lot of singers. Everybody's
Sure.
different, but you bring a soulfulness there that some songs, frankly, do better because of it. They somehow land better or differently, at least, because there's this underpinning in your voice. So with that as a setup, let's talk a little bit about the actual music. So you have, gosh, by my count, you must have 10 solo records, 5, and this is under as described by Solo, 5, at least 5 live records, and then you have 4 records under Soto. And I was interested to know, like, how should we think about the distinction between those? I mean, because you're really kind of the linchpin in both, but is there a sonic difference? Is there a writing approach difference?
The solo albums, well, to correct you on that, I've got 7 out, I believe.
Okay.
I've got number 8 coming out, but I'm not going to really, I'll call solo albums all original material. I won't include the live albums, or even this upcoming record that's coming out in October. It's called the Duets Collection, because all that is it's redone versions of songs that I've already released with other bands and other walks of my career, but doing them with other singers. So I can't really call that a solo album as much as I can. It's more of a side treat. Yeah. It's kind of like a snack. But I'm working on my 8th solo album, which is all original material. And my solo albums are a culmination of my career, mainly on the hard rock field, the hard rock and melodic rock, AOR, whatever you want to call it, field of music. When I started my career with Yngwie Malmsteen, that was more considered the heavy metal side of things. It was the heavier side of my career, as well as some of the other things I did after. But I wanted to kind of pull myself away from that stigma. And in 1989, 1990 is when I did an album with a band called Eyes, and it was also the first Talisman record. And those albums were primarily hard rock, more melodic rock vibes. Yeah. And that sort of shifted and showed people that I was more than just a metal screamer. It showed that I had a little more to offer on the side of rock that I was doing with these 2 bands. So from that, I formed this sort of, I guess you want to call it a cult following of people really likening to me falling into that category of singing. I mean, I grew up with Journey and Queen and all that stuff, but when I started my career, it wasn't in that lane. I wanted to bring that lane back into my career, or not back into it. I wanted to bring it into my career because people didn't know me as that kind of singer. Yeah. And that's where it kind of opened up. And for many years, even decades, I was following that course and that path. So my solo albums are a culmination of exactly that. The sounds are basically influences and inspirations that were throughout my career from, I'd say, from 1990 until the early 2000s. And so that's kind of how I draw for my solo stuff, because I've done heavy rock records, I've done hard rock records, I've done melodic records, I've done ballads, I've done R&B, I've done so many different things, but my solo career kind of encapsulates all of it. Yeah. Because if I'm doing something with Talisman, it's not going to really dig into what I would do on my solo records. Soto, on the other hand, is definitely a heavier, I guess, a more modern urban version of what I love to listen to and what I love to sing. That part was missing in my life. I wasn't doing heavy music anymore, and I wanted to do something that was modern, something that was sophisticated, and just something that just pounds your head in, and also to kind of cater to my harder edged fan base who don't really like to hear me singing, the R&B kind of softer melodic rock kind of stuff. So Soto was based on that. I put that band together based on being able to really get out there and rock the hell out of an avenue or a lane that I was missing in my life.
Yeah. That's really fascinating to hear, because I was actually going to say that same thing. The Malmsteen stuff, there's some of that falls in almost a power metal, and there's some vocal work you do there that's within your sort of your tool set, your vocal tool set, that are defining tracks of your early vocal life, and still are just you hit some of these soaring notes, and you're just singing over this really pounding music.
Oh God, I miss being young. It was so easy when I was young.
That's funny. I hear that once in a while too.
Yeah. You don't think about that kind of stuff when you're young. It's like, when I'm 50, I still got to sing this. Hang on a second.
Yeah, one of the tracks is I'll See the Light Tonight. I think you do just some crazy awesome vocal work on that.
Thank you.
And I think some of that's what helped set. Malmsteen's a force of nature on his own, but like your voice on some of that music really just pushed it over the edge. So, it's nice to know that you're capable of that, but it's really interesting to hear that some of your heart is in some of this, I guess, more melodic rock, some of this more classic rock. Because when you don't do something like Joel Hoekstra's 13, that's a really modern version of like just really great hard rock music, and your voice is so good on that.
Thanks, man.
That seems like it's a very familiar sort of expressive outlet for you, that style.
Sure, and that's one of the great things about Joel. He's also one of those very well-rounded musicians. He's not stuck, or he doesn't have the blinders on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
When he writes, when he creates, and when he carves his own niche, you can hear so many different influences, not really necessarily following one bitmap.
Yeah.
And he allows me to be me on that stuff. He doesn't dictate how to sound, and it's refreshing for him when he says, well, this is the general idea. This is just this is me just kind of barking out some melody ideas. Do what you do, and again, I get that validation and that kind of freedom of expression to just be me, but also giving him something that came out of his pen, something that came out of his mind.
Yeah. And
that's the glory of working with people like Joel, is that I get to be me, but I also can deliver what he's wanting and expecting out of his own stuff.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk to him, and it was a little surprising to me how sort of open he was to have folks like yourself kind of dig in and make this song their own and do their thing and give them the leeway. But I think that's why some of those tracks really jump. That's music I wasn't as familiar with until maybe the past year or so, and it's really good. So I commend people to it. You and your pal Russ Allen do some of the stuff on those, and like there couldn't be a better complement of voices on a really great hard rock record like you guys.
Yeah, Russell's one of my favorite singers out there. He's such a beast, and he's also another one that a lot of people don't realize how versatile he is. I mean, he's so many years with Symphony X. He does what he does, and then you hear that really heavy, aggressive side that he did with Adrenaline Mob, and then you see him with TSO singing kind of a blues, a bar blues kind of thing, where it's got to sound authentic. It's got to sound like it comes from a time that even we weren't alive. So he's another one of those that can really truly tap into so many different things, but make you believe in it. It's not just, okay, I'm singing this because I have to. When he does it, it sounds believable.
Let's cut ahead just, and we'll go back for a minute because I don't want to skip over some of the really good music you've done. But let's talk about TSO for a second, because one of the things I remember telling you after, because you tour with the West Coast Company. I'm in Seattle, so I've seen you many times here. And you'll come out and you'll do, I mean, you've done all kinds of different songs there, but you'll cover the stuff that Tommy did. And that's not easy stuff to sing, because he has a voice that's really, really distinctive in terms of the sort of coarseness in it that gives it this a raw emotion that I'm sure Paul was thinking about when he was trying to communicate the story. And you go on, man, and you sing those songs with that authenticity. That's not an easy thing to do. So in the same way, the same compliment you give to Russell, I want to give to you as relates to the music that you're called on to sing with TSO. Because, I mean, I can't even imagine singing that stuff and keeping my voice in shape.
Well, again, I massive kudos to Paul O'Neill for his creation and his dream and his vision for TSO. And of course, as you're saying, the very early structure of TSO was built behind Tommy Farise's voice as well. The two songs that I sing every year when we do the Christmas Eve and Other Stories show, and even other shows and other renditions of TSO, other albums and other stories that we've done. Tommy was a part of those too. So I do have to bring those forth as close to what Tommy did on them. Of course, I want to inject my own vibe into it, but it's not about me. It's not about Jeff Scott Soto when I'm in TSO or what I'm doing with TSO. I'm giving TSO what they're expecting everybody on stage to do, to bring those stories and those songs forth. And it's not about, look at me, notice me, I can sing this, I can do that. It's all about the story. It's all about the character. It's all about the emotion. And Tommy had that in spades, especially those early songs and when people saw the early versions of TSO. Now, when somebody that important is not part of the fold anymore, somebody else can come in and say, well, now I'm going to make it mine. Or somebody else like myself, I had the mindset of saying, I'm going to extend what Tommy already did. I'm going to bring forth what he did in my way, but not in a way that's going to kind of bastardize or kind of remove what that emotion and that feeling was when you heard those songs for the first time. And so again, I chalk it up to all the experience I've had through the years of not miming to, but paying homage to the people that inspire me as a singer. And from that, from being in top 40 bands, cover bands, before I started with Yngwie, I was able to emulate so many different styles, and all of that drew into me what I was able to put forth later in my own creations. And so I just draw from that, especially when I'm doing TSO. I just draw from the fact that I'm going to be emulating somebody else's creation, so I want to bring it forth in the best way I possibly can.
Yeah, you do a really good job. There's also one or two moments there where you do also create a certain looseness, meaning it starts to, I mean, everything's presented and there's this story quality to the show, but there's some of the songs you do where you kind of create this connection with the audience. You're more animated on stage. There's more movement. There's more, and it's a really nice moment in the context of that show where it opens up a little bit more. It feels more participatory. I wanted to let you know, I think fans really love it, and you do a good job of drawing them in those moments.
There's a fine line again between that, because at that point that's the me coming out. That's the me wanting to entertain. That's me wanting to be at one with the audience, and I want to bring them into my world as much as I want to be in their world. That's not really what TSO is about. TSO, especially when you're singing and you're reciting lyrics, is about the story. It's about making sure that you're connecting with the story, that the song is connecting with the audience, that they're listening to every word and understanding the emotion and what I'm drawing from on all the songs. But then there's a part of the show, as you're talking about, where I open it up because it's kind of like a celebration. We've talked about the sadness. We've talked about the particular song I'm talking about, the runaway who's now home. And then all of a sudden that jubilee, that jubilant feeling that's inside opens me up. And I want to also bring that forward to the audience. I want to open them up. This is a time to celebrate. This is time to be happy. And this is where I get to be Jeff Scott Soto, quote unquote. I pull that part away from everything else I do at TSO until that moment. And that's, again, it was a fine line of trying to navigate exactly how much to be me, and how much to stay within the confines of what is part of the song and part of the show.
Yeah.
And I was able to, it took years. It took me quite a few years to find that balance. And now I've gotten it. And it was something that made Paul very happy. It wasn't too much like notice me, recognize me. It was all about the jubilee, that was the jubilant feeling that the character who's singing is now feeling. And now he wants the rest of the world to feel that feeling. And that's how I do exactly that.
It comes across that way. I think the song's This Christmas Day. And when the song sort of starts to kick in, there's this feeling of reunification, and that's a joyful feeling. And the way you kind of open up on stage expresses that. So,
I not to cut you off, but I think it's going to be even more so, especially as long as everything is going forth and we're able to do the tour this year. I think it's going to be even more so. It's going to be very emotional for me because, again, we've all been cooped up. We are all that same runaway that song is about. We are all disconnected, and when we are reconnected, I'm getting chills right now talking about it. I'm sure every night I'm doing that, it's gonna be so authentic because it's now I'm truly feeling it based on what we've all had to, we had to hunker down for the past year and a half or so.
Yeah.
And I truly hope that we're able to pull off the tour this year because I know it's going to be an assortment of emotions that are going to come out now, finally different from what we've already experienced in the past.
Yeah, it's it's trending that way. I know a lot of bands are making they're publishing their tour schedules. I think that the venues are booking in. The only thing we can pray is that some strange reversal doesn't happen that shuts things back down.
Yeah, and I don't even like talking about it anymore. I don't like to get in the middle of it. It's so politicized. It's so divided in what people believe. I don't really care anymore. All I care about is I don't want my friends to have to cancel tours or be sick or go home. And I don't want fans to do the same. I don't want fans getting sick. I don't want fans or people that we have. There's so many moving parts, man. You have crew, you have the organizers, you have the people that work at the arenas. Everybody's affected by this. It's not just, oh, poor Jeff or poor artists. They have to stay home. They can't perform. It's about all of us. It's about me being able to perform for people and people being able to get on with their lives and feeling like this isn't going to take over and control us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it's an entire sector of business, and just in the business side, on the fan side, I had an anthropologist on the show a couple of months ago, and she's a PhD, and part of her published study talks about how rock and metal fans, part of how they build identity and credibility inside the community is attending these shows. It's a big part of the fandom, and so not being able to go out has a certain effect on us. In a way it doesn't even on some other genres of music and their fan base. So we're all like, I'm with you. I think it's just been over politicized. I'm really just ready to have the opportunity to be back and, hear the music and support you guys.
Right on.
Let's talk a little bit about some of your other music though. I can't not ask you about Rockstar. My understanding is, you're the record that was done under the, in the name of the fictional band. You're the lead vocalist on a great many of those. Yeah.
I'm the original lead singer. If anybody's seen the movie, the very beginning of the movie, when the credits are rolling, there's a song called "Living the Life." That's my voice.
Yeah.
And then it goes in, and then it segues into Mark Wahlberg and Jennifer Aniston in the audience watching Steel Dragon, and on stage is the original singer, and they start playing the song "Stand Up." That's also my voice. So my voice was I provided the lead vocals for the original lead singer. On the soundtrack, there are 3 songs, and only 2 are actually performed by the actors in the movie. The third one is I believe it was Blood Pollution or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so. I'll go back to 1990? Oh man, what year was this? I'm trying to remember when I first met Tom Werman. I think it was 91. I'm trying to remember when Stryper recorded their first and only non-secular album called Against the Law.
Yeah, great album.
Very good friends with these guys for many years, and I got a call from Michael Sweet asking me if I would be able to come into the studio and help them out on to beef up a couple of their songs, backing vocals. He explained they're doing this record. It's a little different, it's a little heavier, it's a little beefier than what they've done. And basically he said, you know, when we do our backing vocals, it sounds too angelic. It sounds too nice. They wanted a rougher edge behind it. And they knew I had that rougher, fuller voice that if I'm singing backgrounds with them, it would kind of beef things up. So singing on a couple songs here and there ended up me singing background on the entire record. Now, Tom Werman was the producer of that record. And Tom Werman he's one of those veteran producers from the 70s and 80s and even into the 90s before he retired. From that moment on, I sang background on every Tom Werman produced album until he retired, which I believe was in '95. I think it was a band called Pariah from Austin, Texas. And next thing I hear, he's quit the business. He bought a B&B in I believe is in Maine.
Yeah.
And he just went to I'm going to run my B&B and I'm done with the music industry. Fast forward to 2000. They're making this movie Rockstar, and they pulled Tom Werman out of retirement. They said, we need you because you are the producer for that stuff and that style. And from that, he started putting his thinking cap on who he wanted to work with. Somewhere along that path, I sang background on the Steelheart's second album, Tangled in Rains. And from there, I met Mike Mativic, and it was such an easy process working with Tom Werman and his engineer Eddie Delana, and we just did so much great work together so quickly and so effectively that he remembered that in the back of his head. And I believe it's one of the things that sparked him to say, I want to call Jeff. I've never worked with him as a lead singer. I want to see what he would sound like here. And of course, having my brothers like Zach Wilde and Jeff Pilson, the other guys who are in the band, backing that decision, they're like, oh yeah, you got to call Jeff. He can do it. He's the one. I was lucky enough to be able to sing all the songs. They sent me everything. I sang all the songs. And then from there, the director had to choose where my voice was going to fit, whether it's going to be for Mark Wahlberg or it was going to be for Bobby Beers, played by Jason Fleming in the movie. They decided my voice sounded too seasoned. I sounded too much like a veteran singer, not like a young kid that doesn't know how to control the singing voice and all that stuff. They said, you sound too pro.
Yeah.
So you can't be Mark Wahlberg's voice. And that's why they gave me the veteran singers parts.
Yeah. Did one of those is stand up, isn't it?
Yeah, stand up. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of
so
those.
I got to keep that. One of my regrets is because I had to sing. I had to demo the "We All Die Young." It's such a great song, and I believe it was even a Steelheart song at one point. And it's such a great song, but I wish that was my voice. I wish my version got to be released because it's such a great song. It's so much fun singing it.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. It was a Steelheart song. Millie, he was called Mike Mativic back then, but Millie got to sing his own song for the movie, even though Mark Wahlberg is miming to it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a cool moment. It's a moment in time that's really, if you're a musician and you have these aspirations. I've talked about this before. That moment when he gets the call and he goes and does the auditions gives you chills, because it's this aspiration. But yeah, so I just wanted a quick side note there because for folks who may love the movie but be less aware, like we're here getting to hear Jeff sing in that music, which is really cool. I wanted to talk just briefly about a couple of other collaborations. We talked about the Joel stuff, which is amazing, and I want people to go check that out. But you've also, and there's too many to talk about, so I just want to hit a few. You worked with Michael Schenker some, yeah?
Well, on one song, yes. There was a time when I was doing these tribute albums with Bob Kulick, rest his soul. Bob had this deal with, I believe, Cleopatra Records or a couple different labels where he was doing tribute albums, but they were tribute albums, and he was kind of a casting director for a producer. He was producing those records, but he was also casting voices for, if they're doing a tribute to Aerosmith, for instance, or a tribute to Queen or a tribute to Ozzy. He knew what voices worked for certain songs. It wasn't just, I'm just going to put a pile of singers, a pile of different players. He was casting these people based on what they sound like, what they do, and how well they would be able to bring these songs forward.
Yeah.
Because if you're just doing a cover, a remake of something, it can be just boring as piss if you're just doing the same exact versions.
Yeah.
So he wanted new elaborations on those songs, but they also had to be done by the right people. And that's why it was great working with Bob, because when he was casting me for certain songs, he already knew my voice would work for these particular ones that he put me on. And yeah, so that was just one of those. He was doing a Michael Schenker tribute album, but this particular album, Michael Schenker was playing all his guitars on. So he was doing stuff from MSG, he was doing stuff, I think, from Rainbow, UFO, etc. throughout his career, redoing certain songs that people knew through his career and his walk of life. And the funny thing is, I didn't get to meet him then. I met him years later at a festival in England. I was backstage and I was introduced to him finally. I finally got to say hello to him. And they were doing the song Doctor, Doctor on stage, literally within the next half hour. He said, "Hey, you should come up and sing it with us." I'm like, "Oh, I'm dressed in shorts." I went to the event, it was a warm, English day. And I went to the event just to chill. I didn't go to perform or anything. So I wasn't even dressed for the part. And to be honest with you, I didn't memorize the song. I didn't memorize the verses. So he said, "Oh, don't worry. We've got a teleprompter on the stage. It's because I know the song, but I just don't know all the words by heart, except for the Doctor, Doctor, please." That's the easy part. So I said, "Great. Yeah, I'd love to come up." I'll never forget it. Went on stage. We started the song. I think it's because of the way the sun was facing. The teleprompter was basically all black. It was like a silhouette
of
a teleprompter. You could not see. I had to go like this to see the words. That's how close I was to the teleprompter. I literally went on my knees to try to memorize some of the lyrics of the verses. And I looked at the other guy that was normally sit there to sing the song and go, "Take the verses. I'll just sing the choruses."
That's awesome. What a great story. Well, look, we can't hit them all, but let me for the people who are on, let me just now that we're on tributes, you've, and I don't know if it's the same producer, but across your career, you've been called on to cover Deep Purple, Queen, Van Halen, Ozzy, Aerosmith, Pink Floyd, Maiden, Zeppelin, the Beatles. It's an impressive. I know, and fans love these. They love what some of their favorite musicians get in and do these covers. So I encourage people to go and take a look at these. And again, I'll have a pointer. But Jeff's covered all the greats. And I think that's another telltale sign of how he's viewed by his peers inside the music community, which is really cool. You also did some work with Gus G. Didn't you do a track or two with Gus?
Yeah, I did. I did one song on his first solo album, and I think I did two on the second. I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure I did two on the second one. And yeah, he'd been doing Firewind for so long, and he was doing his first solo album when he was still with Ozzy. So it was nice of him to invite me to be a part of that, because we had just met. We were just more acquaintances at that point.
Yeah.
And the fact that I got to work with him on that first album, and then he wanted to do like a little mini tour in the US, and he asked me to be the front man for that. So it was also great being able to sing a lot of the songs from that record that I didn't sing on. And we did an Ozzy song as well. It was a lot of fun being a part of Gus's arsenal as well, because I think he's one of the greatest players out there. He's such a talent. And I never followed Firewind. I never really followed his career. I only knew of him really from the album that he did with Ozzy. And I don't think he even played on much of that. So I was intrigued by any guitar player that gets the Ozzy gig. You gotta basically sit back and listen.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't bring in any slouches. And so this is where I finally discovered Gus's talent, and from there I expanded, and I listened to Firewind, I listened to everything he's doing lately, and he's just brilliant guitar player, just so dedicated to his craft. He's in between shows, before soundcheck, in between soundcheck, he's constantly playing. It's not like he's just warming up. He's just always wanting to get better, always wanting to be the best he can be, and I absolutely admire about the guy.
Yeah. And we had Gus on as well. I love these connections that we find between in the music community. But your voice families really well with his material, because he usually finds somebody who's got that real power and that real ability to hit that that grit and give it some drive. So
Right.
those tracks are great, and so we'll commend people to
Thank
go
you.
and take a look at those too. And most recently, the last one I want to mention in the collaborative world is Octavision, and this is more recent. And I wasn't actually aware of this until I started kind of prepping to have this conversation with you. It was interesting to me because I'm half Armenian, and the composer of the thing's an Armenian guy. And this music is really good, but it leans more on the progressive side than things I've heard you sing before. Do you think that's fair characterization?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sons of Apollo opened a whole new door for me, again, when you do something and people like what you did or they believe in what you did, they finally look at you differently. They look at you as, oh, I didn't know he could do that.
Yeah.
I never did anything in the prog world. I've dabbled in it in Talisman and other bands I've been in. We dabble into like different time sigs and that type of thing, but I've never been in a situation like a Dream Theater or a Rush, a Prog, that level of that style in that world. So being a part of Sons of Apollo opened that world up, and this is where people like Hovak from Octavision and others that I've done since. I've done a lot of sessions now all of a sudden because a lot of people are seeing what I can actually bring to the prog world is a little different than what the normal singers are doing in prog.
Right.
And one of the things one of the biggest validations I've gotten in my career, and I stand proud every time I say this. I remember listening to an interview that Mike Portnoy was doing when we were doing the first Sons of Apollo tour, where he was asked to describe each of the members and his relationship with them. And when he got to me, he said, the one thing I love about Jeff is he injects soul and there's a different emotion, there's a different soulfulness that he puts in what he's doing with us than I've ever heard in any prog situation ever. So Jeff is not a prog singer, but he can sing that style, but he brings in something else that wasn't there before, and that's a soulfulness. And to actually say soulfulness in the same category of prog, it's not something you hear about that often. So that to me, again, was another validation of what I bring to the table. And from that, I think others are now that have hired me and that brought me on to especially things like Octavision, they want to see if they can also get that kind of side instead of it being so, straight to the point. And Prog's got its own kind of world of where a lot of the singers, they make sure they stay within. There's not really a broader scope to. I mean, it's crazy that some of the stuff that they sing and do.
Yeah.
But I think it's the way people look at prog music is more mathematical. I guess I'm saying there's a lot of that approach even to the singing, where it's got to be emotive. It's got to be, if you're angry, make it angry, make it tough, make it aggressive. And if it's light and it's something emotional, just drop back and do it in a way that could sound like Marvin Gaye is doing it, I guess. I don't know. I don't even think about it. I just let it flow. It's part of my DNA. I just let it flow.
Well, we'll move on to Sons of Apollo since you brought it up. But that as a transition there, it's a more recent effort. But I went and listened to a bunch of this Octavision, and it's really good. And it was really refreshing to hear. And even inside the prog world, I think Hovak has got his own distinctive songwriting and compositional style. But how you layer your voice on top of that did create like a new experience. It was really cool. It was really, really cool. All my prog friends need to go check it out. I hadn't heard about it.
Yeah. Billy Sheehan is on that, and Billy's the one that got me in there. He was already doing it with Hovak, and I don't know if it was a suggestion from Billy to get me on it, or if it was Hovak that went to Billy's scene if I would be on it. But Billy came to me. He said, "Hey, this is thing I'm being hired to do, and they're interested in to see if you'd sing on it." And I said, if it's good enough for Billy to play on, it's good enough for me to sing on.
Yeah. It's a good match, and an unlikely match. Like with the music, so whoever sort of I guess suggested that and made those choices, like kudos to them for like thinking outside the box a little bit. I think it's really good. So let's talk a little bit about Sons of Apollo. This is more recent, but this project landed really, really with a splash. That's such a tired metaphor, but it came on strong. Now it's a so-called super group by virtue of the fact that everybody at every position is such a strong player with such a strong history. But even
and we all walk around wearing capes too.
of course, you're going to have to do that now. But it's
Well, the first letter of the band name is the right one, big S.
You guys, you landed on. I mean, everybody knew you, and so when the name started getting attached to this new project, everybody was really excited, and it didn't disappoint. That first record had tons.
There were a lot of
of
people
buzz.
that don't trust me. I read all those comments. I got a lot of hate out there. They're like, "Why couldn't you get Russell Allen to sing this band and this Soto guy?"
Yeah,
you can't.
But you know what, dude? From my time at Microsoft, what's the reality is that vocal minority is a minority. You know, of course they're still out there, and everybody's going to have an opinion. But
Sure.
The music, my perception of its reception is that it was overwhelmingly positive. And the second record, even more so. So much so, in fact, that it had a bunch of chart positions all across Europe. So, I mean, as one indicator of success, that can be something that can be looked at. But I was revisiting it because I've heard this material, because I'm an old Dream Theater fan, and so of course I'm a fan of Mike's. And I stopped. I had to listen to it a couple of times. The track you guys did called "Desolate July." This was an homage to David Z, was it not?
Yes.
Really powerful tune. Like, yeah.
Thank you. Both Mike and I mean, obviously Mike knew him a lot longer than I did, but they were very close. They were good friends for many years before I got to meet and work with David. But I think I was as close to David as Mike was in the length of time he knew David as the time that I actually got to spend with David, because when you're touring with anybody, you're spending every day with that person, and you get to know them inside and out, and you get to know who they truly are, as opposed to knowing somebody for many years and seeing them in different walks of life and different backstage at this show or opening up a couple of shows. When you tour with somebody, I mean, you truly understand what makes them tick and who they are. And I got a lot of hands-on experience with all my guys, and they're all my brothers. And it's, when you lose somebody like that, it's beyond heavy. It's exactly like losing a family member. It's exactly like losing a pet. It's the same deep hearted, everything just drops in you. And of course, we both felt the same way about David. And when I heard that song, I don't even know, first of all, I knew I wanted to write the lyrics about David. And when the actual word July was thrown into the title, I had to come up with something that describes why I'm talking about July. Is it a happy July? Is it a July morning? It's a desolate July, because every time this date in July comes around, it just brings me to that place when the first day I found out we lost them. And it's, I hate to sound, I don't want it to be a downer. It truly is a tribute to the person that David Z was. And the song is a testament to who he was and how he was. So I just want to have that memory in there, more so as a positive one, as opposed to feeling dismal every time, that time of year comes around.
Yeah. We've already kind of talked about the degree to which you really always bring a soulfulness, but this song, maybe it's part of the layer of the emotion, but this song, I had to re-listen to it a couple of times because of its impact. So I think you've done a good job in capturing like your love for him with that track. And I want to call attention to it so people might, and I know you guys participate in a sort of a yearly benefit in his name.
Yeah, his brother Paulie started the David Z Foundation. Paulie was already involved, as was David, in rock scholarships, or music scholarships rather, for the rock schools. And they were always about giving back. If anybody knows anything about the Z brothers, they also had a TV show called Z Rock. And the show was loosely based around the fact that they actually did have a side group. They were a rock band at night, and during the day they were doing kids songs. They would be hired for parties, little events for children's organizations, etc., where they would actually be singing children's songs, Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round, that kind of stuff. But they loved music and the connection with music and kids. They loved music as kids and didn't have programs. They didn't have scholarships. They didn't have ways to help them progress and learn about music and the importance of music. So they decided to, even without the world knowing who they were throwing themselves into that world of music programs and scholarships, etc. The fact that we lost David, Paulie went the next step. He put David's name on the foundation, and now everything is based on what they already started together many, many years ago. And it's now because of David's passing, the platform is become much bigger. We can utilize a lot of the people around the world who knew David or didn't know him but knew about him. And everybody wants to be a part of this. Everybody that's contributing into it is truly doing it from the heart. It's not about what it can do for them or what it can do for me. It's all about what we can do for the organization and bringing the awareness of music, the importance of music, the fact that music programs are being cut from schools, and the kids need an avenue. They need to know that there's somewhere they can go, and we're providing that for them.
Yeah, it's I love that you said that, because I've mentioned that on the show before, the fact that music programs are getting cut, and I don't think people understand. It's not just about, do we need another trumpet player? It's the very act of creating music. It helps the soul. And I know that sounds super high-minded, but that's an important experience. So I love that you guys are doing that.
It goes back to the cliche of what we talked about earlier, about music being therapy, about music healing the soul or helping you through hard times, all of the above. Yeah. You're going to have that naturally. But if you also have that natural yearning and that natural knack to pick up an instrument, and you want to actually expand upon it, if you come from a poor family or a family that can't afford lessons, or there's no music programs that give you that access, this is where the David Z Foundation is really stepping forward, and we're uniting with all the rock schools. I'm working also hands-on with another organization that we brought into the fold. And to me, it's important just for the awareness to be there, for everybody to know that there's somewhere they can go. It's a click away to get information on how to get that child to progress and excel in what they want to do, if they want to do this for a living. And if they don't want to do it for a living, it's a great hobby that keeps you out of trouble, that helps you through hard times. It keeps your creativity flowing. So the boredom or the ideal of maybe going down the wrong track, all those things are so important. That's what music has to offer.
That's exactly right. I couldn't have said that better myself. That's and we'll include pointers to that stuff in our show notes here. I wanted to make a nod too in the context of your work with Mike and Sons of Apollo. You guys recorded a live show. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Is it Plovdiv Roman Theater?
Plovdiv.
Okay.
It's Plovdiv.
Plovdiv.
It's exactly how it's spelled. Plovdiv.
Okay. I'm not great at foreign languages, but you guys did. People need to watch this. From the very beginning, it's just a beautiful location. Like, it must have been fun as hell to sing there.
Oh, I don't get nervous anymore. I don't. You can put me in front of 75,000 people, which I got to do with TSO when we played the Bakken Festival, and we played on both stages. Man, I've got some crazy things that I can look back and reflect in my life, and that was one of those things that Paul O'Neill said. Jeff, you know, the first time you saw the Beatles playing that on the top of a rooftop, performing a concert. And then you saw it many years later where U2 did the same kind of thing with The Streets Have No Name. TSO is going to be the first one. If anybody ever is crazy enough to do what we just did on two stages, making two stages lit up and both bands playing at the same time, anybody's daring enough to try that, they're always going to remember that we did it first.
Yeah.
And I love that. So the Plovdiv thing came about in Bulgaria. There's this old amphitheater. It was quite a few years ago. I don't know exactly when. It was basically dug up. It was buried in a lot of sand and mountains and rocks or whatever, because it wasn't used for a long time. I think when they were about to build developments there, or they were trying to develop the area, they dug it up and they realized, hang on a second, this thing is still intact the way it was. This thing was built before Christ. Wow. This goes back to BC, this amphitheater. So Plovdiv is one of the oldest, if not the oldest city in all of Europe. This is what I may be going off the rails here, but this is what I've heard.
This is good.
And so when they dug this up, they didn't do anything really to restore it. They try to keep it as it truly was. I mean, they have the stone benches. The steps are really narrow and thin. And I remember towards the end of the thing, I normally go out into the audience when we did the Van Halen cover. I remember the band and the crew saying, dude, please be careful, because I have a size 14 foot and those steps are literally like a size 6. So if you step the wrong way, you're going to go tumbling down a bunch of stone.
Man.
So I remember being petrified, like almost walking on my tippy toes because I didn't want to step the wrong way and go tumbling down while the cameras are rolling. So so this is it's an amazing, again, the acoustics even of this amphitheater. That's why amphitheaters are built. They're based around where the acoustics would work for, especially back then, BC. They didn't have amplification. They didn't have microphones. Everything about it had to be so you can do a performance there and be able to be heard and seen through the entire audience. So when I heard we were doing a live DVD there, it was just, and we were going to have an orchestra and a choir. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Now, my wife is from Bulgaria, so she was there. Her family were there. A lot of friends that I met through her were there. So I had a lot on my shoulders. It truly was like doing a hometown show. It was like playing an LA show with your family and your friends there, except you're doing it in a Roman amphitheater. You know, it's unbelievable. So everything about that DVD still gives me chills today. I remember at the end of it, because it was a longer show than we normally did with Sons of Apollo, I went backstage and I just collapsed because I gave everything I had in me and then some. And it was so emotional for me. There were times I was singing, just looking around me going, oh my God, I can't believe what we're doing, where we are.
Yeah.
And all that emotion on top of all the energy I put into the show, I was just drained flat. And I even told Mike, I'm never doing that again.
Well, I just watched it the other day. And everybody's got to go watch this. It's, I mean, you do songs from the record, of course, but you do a bunch of covers. You do some Dream Theater stuff. You do Aerosmith. You do the Van Halen, and you nailed it that night. You were on. Yeah, it was an impressive vocal performance.
I give Portnoy gets all the credit for the set list. I'm going to call him in a positive way. This is not, I don't want Blabbermouth or anybody else to take this the wrong way. He's a control freak, but in a positive way, in a way that he knows it's good for us. Yeah. It's good for all of us. It benefits us. So when he builds a set list or even suggests, he sent a master list of songs that he knew would work great for the orchestra and the choir, as opposed to us saying, yeah, I want to do this song, I want to do that song. No, he already put the concept of thought behind which songs would work best. And then I went and checked off the ones that I wouldn't mind singing and I would love to sing. But it was the first time in my life I've ever sung Kashmir. I've never sung Dream On live. I've never sung Gates of Babylon. So Diary of a Madman, never sang that song live. So for me to actually sing these the first time ever the day before rehearsal with the orchestra, and then actually go do it live in front of an audience with cameras rolling, and this is going to be now for the world to see on a Blu-ray, it truly was. I'm tired now just talking about it because it truly was a lot of work.
Well, I'm actually glad you shared the backstory on the various pressures that, because I've said this before in the show, no disrespect to the instrumentalists, but the vocalist has some unique pressures. One, like it or not, they're usually the focus for the audience. Two, their
Sure.
instruments biological. So diet, sleep, all of these things affect the voice in certain ways. And then you add the pressure.
You can on a guitar player's fingers.
That's right. So layer on that, you're going to film it. So it's a forever thing. It's, at this historic location, you've got family. It's a lot. And the fact that you sort of showed up with an A game is really cool. I'm glad I got to hear some of the rest of it, because it was already like fun to watch just for the music and the performance and beautifully shot. Now I have more, I have more respect for you for all the things that had to go, you had to do right to nail that. It's well
Thank
done.
you.
It's well done.
I appreciate it.
People need to go watch this. It's a great set list. Just I've said enough. Go watch it. We'll put a pointer.
Awesome.
I don't want to take your whole afternoon. I want to make a couple of other mentions though. you're in this other sort of super group called W.E.T.
You can call it WET. We call it.
Okay. I wasn't familiar with this, so that's probably why I got the name wrong. Is this? But then I went and listened to the music, and the music's amazing. Will there be more from this project, or are you too busy with other things now?
This is an ongoing project that was exactly that, a project. This was the brainstorm of the president of Frontiers Records, Serafino Perugino. I've been with Frontiers Records. Next year it'll be 20 years, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I'll go on record by saying that this was his first super group idea. Now, super group can be seen or discussed in many different facets. Whenever something comes out about WET, they say the super group WET, and then you see all the comments, super group. I've never heard of any of these guys. Super group is, in Serafino's eyes, what he wanted to piece together for this concept. A super group to him was taking the best of some of his talent and putting them in one room and seeing what they come up with.
Yeah.
So in his heart, it was a super group from the very beginning, even though I was the only one at that point who had much of a name behind myself. There's another group called Work of Art that's on Frontiers Records, and another group called Eclipse. And this is where we got the name of the band from. Work of Art is where the W comes from. Eclipse is where the E comes from, and Talisman is where the T comes from.
Yeah.
So you put these three writers / members of these three different bands, and that's what formed and that's what came of. In the beginning, it was a one-off just to kind of appease Serafino's yayas. He wanted to see what we'd come up with, but it was so strong, it was so widely received. It was time to talk about album number 2, and then album number 3, and then as of last year, album number 4. We also have a live album, and this is one thing that we all love doing, as long as it's we find the time and we can squeeze it into the other things that we're actually already doing.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why WET has never really toured, because we don't have the time to tour. When we have the time to record, we basically, everybody locks in their schedule so we can get the albums done. But after that, there's a new Work of Art album. There's Jeff Scott Soto's working on 15 other albums, and Eclipse is working on, and Eric Martinson, who's part of the E in that word, he's also writing and producing other people. So everybody's extremely busy, exceptionally busy. And that's one of the reasons why WET doesn't tour, but we will continue doing albums as long as, again, like I say, I'll always say, as long as people are listening and want it, we'll be doing them.
Yeah, it's really good music. I wanted to call attention to it because I'm assuming if I hadn't heard of it, there's other people who haven't heard of it yet. So it's a chance to go discover 4 albums worth of music that's really, really well done.
Thank you. And I want to preface something you're probably going to bring up.
Yeah.
Just before that first album was released, I was let go from Journey. Now, on purpose, there were some songs on the first WET album that had a very Journey flavor to them, and I can't help it. I'm so influenced by Steve Perry. It's just in my DNA. There are times you give me a ballad, you're going to hear my Perryisms come out, because it's just part of the same way Sam
Perryisms.
Part of. Yeah, Sam Cooke was part of his wheelhouse, and he came from that Sam Cooke lane, and you can hear it in a lot of Journey songs, a lot of the phrasings and the grammar, the way certain words are said and sung. Steve was able to, he put that into his own music. So from that, I kind of draw from Steve Perry into my own music. And of course, Sam Cooke, I went into his reference. I had to go to the source. So that being said, there were a couple songs that sounded very Journey, and on purpose, I wanted to leave my mark on those songs of what could have been had I gone on with Journey.
Sure.
And a lot of people heard those particular songs I'm talking about. They said, this sounds like what Journey could have actually become, or what Journey would have sounded like with Jeff singing for them. And that to me was, I did it, now I can move away from that. Of course, I'll always have that Steve Perry influence in what I'm doing, and you'll hear like little bits and bobs here and there. But those 2 particular songs on that record, I pulled out all the Perry stops.
Tell us, can you give us the titles of those 2 tracks so we can?
If I Fall is the definite, that's definitely one. It's a song called If I Fall. It's so Journey that I think it's more Journey than even Journey's music. And it was strange when I got the song, because it sounded like, are you guys doing it like this on purpose? Are you're trying to make me sing like Steve Perry on this on purpose, or was it just by pure coincidence and accident?
Yeah.
And I think the other one is called Running from the Heartache. I'm just going into Perry's world, and I'm bringing forward that clean Sam Cooke, Motownish kind of vibe to the hard rock sound.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I was going to mention it because even though that didn't go on, to me, the fact that Journey made the decision to have you tour with them and gave you a nod to be in the band, however it changed later, is yet another affirmation, right? It's got to be, because Steve Perry is widely regarded as one of the greatest rock singers ever.
Absolutely.
So having to step into his shoes to perform his songs, that's not trivial.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, it's again, the validation came from Neil, who heard me, you know, when we had the year prior to me joining Journey, we had a band called Soul Circus, and there were a few little bits that I put a few Perryisms, but intentionally I didn't want it to sound like an extension of what Neil was already doing with Journey. He wanted it to be a departure, pun intended, from what he was doing with Journey, and that's what Soul Circus was supposed to represent. So I tried to stay away from that world, but there's one particular song on the record called Coming Home that I parried the hell out of it. And that's actually on my upcoming duets album that I duetted with Dean Casanova, who's another one who really nails that Perry world. So now for both of us, Perry, it's kind of like the Deliverance, ding 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 ding. It's like, and now the banjo does it. That's me and Dean on this song. So it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna Perry out on that, I'm gonna Perry out on this. And you know, God bless Steve Perry. He gave us just a world of influence in music that's so important to everyone.
Yeah, he
and
did.
So from my time with Soul Circus, and even at sound checks when I'm sitting at the piano just playing every B-side deep cut Journey song under the sun, obviously Neil stored in the back of his head that when push came to shove and it was either pack up and go home, you know, our singer's toast, he needs the rest, or we pull in the relief pitcher. And that's what I was for the first year with Journey until they dubbed me the permanent singer. But then obviously that didn't last more than 5 months.
Yeah. No, and I'm not into I've never had the goal of drama or whatever. I just love the affirmation part of that. And as a person who has loved Perry forever, I can only imagine what it must have been like to sing his songs, fronting that band.
Dude, one of the hardest parts about singing for Journey, okay, first of all, replacing Steve Perry. Steve already had that task, but now I had the task of replacing the guy who replaced the guy.
Yeah.
Now, if it were Queen, if it were a situation like Queen or AC/DC where the singer's deceased, there's no way that singer's ever going to sing those songs again. So for the band to forge on, they have to get a new singer. Stop whining, stop bitching, stop moaning. The band's moving forward with a new singer because their original singer is no longer with us.
Right.
Steve Perry was alive and well. Nobody knew his whereabouts. Nobody knew if he was recording it, but all he ever said was, I'm retired from singing, I'm retired from performing. But in the fans, especially the Fairweather fans who are not watching all the blabbermouths and all the talk and all the gossip, the Fairweather fan they'll come to a Journey song and all they'll say is, that ain't Steve Perry, because they don't even know he hasn't been in the band for 20 years.
Yeah.
All they know is, who's that guy? What? This ain't Journey. What's going on here? You know, they feel duped. Yeah. So that was probably the hardest part about singing for Journey for me, was going on stage every night when a good portion of the audience is going, wait, Steve Perry's alive. He can still sing, I bet. Why isn't he doing this? Why do they have this guy? Yeah. And that's, if Steve Perry were no longer with us, I think it would have been a little easier transition.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt. That's well said. I think there's some fans, they just, I've had,
and I get it. You know, I get it.
I do too.
I'm not trying to get it.
I'm not trying to throw shade on fans. But I do. I like to encourage this idea of fandom that is, you know, loving the artist for all of the things the artist wants to do, which is why I think you're such a great example. You've done the stuff with Yngwie, which is really, aggressive power metal, hitting these crazy notes. You've done stuff that's more rock oriented. You've now done stuff that's got more of a progressive edge. And I like to encourage fandom that says, let's be a fan of Jeff and go see what kind of things Jeff does. let's not only be happy when we get to hear Jeff sing with XYZ band, whatever that band is. And that's why I'm taking you through a stroll of your career.
I think I want my epitaphs on my tombstone to say Jeff Scott Soto, a work in progress.
That's good. That's good.
Even when I'm dead, I've got so much a body of work out there that there's so much to discover. I'm a work in progress for life.
Oh my gosh, you should totally have a bunch of posthumous records coming out because you know.
Oh gee, like they're doing with Prince. You know?
Yeah,
they're going into Prince's vaults and releasing stuff. I'm sure he wanted no one to hear.
Yeah, well, they were in the vault for a reason.
Yeah.
Well, let me do a couple of things real quick. I want folks to know, just as a couple of more nods here. As a session, you already described the situation with Stryper, but in that same way, you've gotten a call from bands like House of Lords, McQueen. This took me back, McQueen Street. I remember a buddy of mine was their touring drummer. I remember seeing those guys live. You mentioned Stillheart, Babylon AD, Slaughter, Paul Gilbert, Dokken, Ronnie Montrose. I mean, there's so many great records that your talent has helped beef up, even when you weren't on in front of the mic as a lead. I just wanted to say, and that's not all of them, but I wanted folks to get a sense of the breadth of your participation and contributions, even outside a lot of the bands we've talked about, where you're the focal point. I guess the last thing is, let's talk just a little bit about duets. This is your next Frontiers release, and this is you kind of mentioned this, I think, or maybe you told me this before we got on the stream, but these are songs from various prior releases, but you're doing them in a new way. Tell us a little about it.
The idea came from I was having a discussion with Frontiers about my next solo record, and I said, in between that, is there something we can do? We don't know when the world's going to reopen. We don't know when live shows are going to happen again. I don't know. None of us knows anything at this point. We're just coming up with ideas and game plans of how to fill that time, depending on how long we think or we feel it's going to be. And this is where I got to actually utilize what I learned from Bob Kulick in doing all the tribute albums he did. This was sort of a tribute to myself. At first it was the idea from Frontiers. They said, why don't you do a covers album? And I've done enough covers and tribute albums and all that stuff through my life and career already. I thought that's going to be a bit bland. People have heard me do other songs and remakes of other songs already enough. Yeah. If I do another one of those, I think it'll fall flat. It's like, yeah, we've heard him sing this song, that band, whatever. So then they said, well, what about doing what Michael Schenker did and doing a remake album of stuff that you've already done? I go, now we're onto something. And this is where I came up with the idea. Why don't I invite different singers that, for me, work on each individual song? Like I said, with Dean Castronova on Coming Home, because he's got that Perry influence and that song is very Perry driven. Yeah, it made sense to get Dean. So I became a bit of a casting director, the way Bob Kulick was on those other tribute records. Except for the music, I tried to keep the music as straight ahead as the way people know those songs and have heard them a bunch of times. But it was also about having the right voice singing alongside with me, because it's going to be easy for me to just redo something that I've done and I've sung live for so many years and so many decades already. But to have somebody else come in and represent that the way those songs should be represented was going to be the task. So my main list and the majority of my list were Frontiers singers or artists. Every singer on this album had to be related to or on Frontiers records. I think the only one that's on there that is not, let me go back, I think Matt Slevin is the only singer that's not on a Frontiers release, but everybody else is connected to Frontiers records with some connection. And then on top of that, I had a lot of the new breed, a lot of the new singers that were on Frontiers records, from Dino to from Renan, the band Electric Mob in Brazil. We've also got Elidio, who's also just released his new solo album. And Elidio's part of the Queen Extravaganza. So everybody's tied into me in some way, shape, or form, but they're also tied into Frontiers music as well. And that way it gives the label a boost. It gives their individual bands and talents a boost. Nathan James from Inglorious, I've got
Johnny Joeli he's doing these things. He's got Hardline, and he's doing the other things with Castronova on Frontiers. So everybody's tied in some way, shape, or form with Frontiers music. So that way we kind of keep it under that umbrella.
Yeah.
It's also bringing the songs forth the way they're meant to sound if somebody else were singing them. The way Eric Martin sings Mysterious, the way Russell Allen singing Calling All Girls with Me. I chose Frontiers, and I chose the songs that we wanted to redo, and then it was up to me to find the right voices to cast in there with me.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love the thoughtfulness in the approach. And I was going to throw those names out. I don't need to now because you've given us all these guys.
And I'm missing some because it's the album is just chock full of, again, Eric Martinson. He's singing one of the songs from the Rockstar movie with me on it, and I everybody knows Eclipse. They know Eric's voice a certain way when we do Wet, but I know Eric is really into hard driving rock and roll. He loves AC/DC, he loves Motorhead. So I wanted to give him something he could just sink his teeth into, as opposed to having to sing something more along the lines of the hard rock world that he's normally used to being heard. Yeah. So I took all these different things into account in who I was going to cast on certain songs, and my God, everybody stepped up and then some.
Yeah, it's and tell us when that's out, October or something.
Yeah, the actual date escapes. I think it's October 6th. I don't have it in front of me here.
It is. But, I know it's early. It's like the 6th or the 8th.
Yeah.
So we can, and will there be some more singles you'll release before then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the next single will be the one with Dean, if I'm not mistaken, Coming Home. And then we've also done a video single for the song Holding On with BJ, who's he's the singer of a new band called Spectra that I got signed to Frontiers. But yeah. BJ's also been part of my solo career and the band Soto for the past 20 years. So he's a lead singer, and he always has been a lead singer who could play guitar and keyboards. He's a great instrumentalist, but he's more of a great singer. It's one of the reasons why I brought him along with me, because a lot of my songs are very demanding vocally, and you can't just get a guitar player who can kind of sing backing vocals. I needed a lead singer in the band to be able to cover a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
So BJ's been kind of playing second fiddle to me, and most people don't know him as the great lead singer that he is, and this is why I pushed like hell to get this Spectra album. The band Spectra signed, and I worked on the record, co-produced it with Alessandro, and we came up with a great debut record for these guys. And now the rest of the world can hear BJ's voice in all its glory.
That's cool. Yeah, I look forward to the record as well as the duet you do. And you mentioned something that we didn't touch on as you were talking is your connection to Queen. You've performed with Brian May. You've been part of the extravaganza. You've done tributes. There's even a photo when I was just kind of trying to put together some things to chat about. There's some photos of you that look very much, very Queen-like, very, I don't know. You have the same facial structure, I think. So it makes sense to me in all kinds of ways that you've done that. Was Queen a big influence for you?
Oh God, yes. I mean, there are only 3 bands in the world that I would ever want to front, that I ever want to replace the singers and represent. And I've gotten to do 2 of them, like Journey, Queen, and Van Halen. And when I'm talking Van Halen, it's no slight to Sammy Hagar, but early Van Halen is the Van Halen that I love. When I talk about Van Halen, that's the Van Halen I'm referring to. The Van Hagar years was another world, and I love that too. I love Sammy. I love his voice. I love everything he does, and I have nothing but respect and love for the man. But the party Van Halen was the one that got me. It was the one that gives me the memories of when I was really starting to accept rock into my world. By the time Sammy was there, I'd already done Yngwie. I'd already been here, there, and everywhere. Yeah. So in the fact that I got to sing for Journey, and I got to actually perform Queen songs with Brian and Roger, it truly is. It's a pinch me moment, really, and it's something I would have absolutely accepted and loved to do in a real way, but unfortunately didn't come to pass. The closest to that was doing the Queen extravaganza that Roger was very part of.
Yeah, no, I still think it's telling that you participated that way. And my note before is a little frivolous, but there's you have a little bit of Freddie in your in your physical appearance, which is just an interesting aside. Hey, so
he worked me in so many ways. And again, if
if you see me in concert, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
When you see me in concert, I take so much of what Freddie left behind in terms of how to entertain an audience. It's easier to entertain an audience at a club because you basically can see the last row of people at a club. When you're doing an arena or stadium, your vision basically starts getting blurred after about 35, 40 rows back. You cannot leave those people out of the show. You can't leave the people in the nosebleeds out, the ones on the side of the very top of the arena. You cannot leave them out of the show and just perform into the people that you can actually see. And that's something Freddie taught me very early on, is how to connect with every last person from the furthest seat to the one that's in front. In fact, the worst seat when you're watching me perform is actually the first 2 rows, because I probably don't look down at you at all. I'm making sure that everybody else in where I'm playing is covered, because you're already getting the best view, the best visual, and you can see everybody else doing what they're doing up close. So I'm going to make sure that everybody else that can't really see you so well, or that I can't see at all, they're going to be part of it.
Yeah. It's clear to me, having seen you as many times as I have, that it's important to you to not just deliver vocally, but sort of present the material in a way that's exciting and to create that audience connection. Like, not all vocalists do that. I'm not even suggesting that they must in order to be a success. But it's clear to me that that's a quality of you as a performer that's important to you, because it comes out. We kind of talked about it a little bit with TSO, and I totally get the guardrails you're talking about, what you're doing there, but the places where your personality is consonant with what you're trying to do, it shines better for that. And I did see Sons of Apollo here in Seattle. I think you guys played the Showbox.
Right.
Yeah, same deal. You do, and by the way, in the filmed one we talked about, it's the same thing. And it was fun to see you go out in the crowd, like, and I know it was fun, and you were trying not to trip, but that's just another part of the, you see the same sort of audience familiarity that you build throughout the rest of the set. So folks who haven't seen Jeff perform, one, go see them when they come through town. Hopefully it's going to happen this holiday. On the touring, did I see that you guys published dates for Sons of Apollo early next year?
All we have at the moment are 4 shows in South America, and we're praying. This is the 4th time they've been rebooked, and we're praying that they go through this time. One of the hot spots we were worried about is Brazil, but now their vaccine rollouts they're moving very quickly now. So we're hoping, again, whether the vaccine is the end all be all that gets us all back working or not, that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that we actually just get to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they go through, because in January we're supposed to go do that. And at the moment we don't have anything else booked for the year, because as everybody else is trying to make up for lost time, a lot of things I'm even seeing now that they tried to book for this year are now starting to get pulled, and they're just going to start canceling and postponing everything until 2022. Mike Portnoy himself alone has a lot of stuff to make up for, much less Sons of Apollo. So there's a lot of makeup stuff going on, and everybody's going to try to accommodate, what's first in line, so to speak. But at the moment, Sons of Apollo only has 4 dates booked for January, and I'm filling as much as I can with all the other things that I have going on in my life.
Yeah. Well, we'll watch for the duets record, and then the forthcoming solo record that you're going to be crunching in between your other dates.
Yeah.
The last question.
Well,
go ahead.
The new solo record truly is it's very important to me, because it's going to be marking my 2 decades with Frontiers. It's 20 years with a single label, something I've never had before. It's a 20-year relationship with these guys in this company who are more like family to me, that I have to represent the chances and the love that they've given me for me to be able to do what I do on their label. And so that album has to be that important for it to represent exactly what I've been doing with them for 20 years now.
So you said, I think I heard you say the music for that's done. You just got to write the vocals and
right.
them.
And I think some of the music's still being kind of some of the bells and whistles are being done to them now, so I don't quite have them yet. And as well, they don't want to bombard me. Alessandro, who I did my last album, Wide Awake in My Dreamland with, He doesn't want to bombard me with 11 songs. Okay, now go. So he sends me like 2 at a time because he realizes I'm crazed right now, packing and moving and everything. So just this morning, I was trying to carve one out so I could see if I could sing it before I have to go start moving some boxes. Such a rock and roll lifestyle. Sing, and then get in the car and drop off of some boxes of dishes to the new house.
Yeah, that's I actually love that. It makes you very, very, very human. Dude, you've been so gracious with your time. I appreciate you spending some time with me. My last question for you is, and this is kind of a hard one because you're so busy and we've heard so much that you do. Is there something though that time permitting, and this may be later in your life, that you've always wanted to do? Could be another style of music. It could be another creative pursuit like painting, or maybe it's completely not creative, but something that is a mountain you want to climb, but it's got to wait till you can get to it.
At the moment, I can't really foresee anything that I haven't done yet. I can't really think of anything. I don't really have any bucket lists or wish lists anymore. I've gotten to meet everybody that I feel is important in my life, and I've gotten even validation from a lot of those people. I've got to record with a lot of them. I've got to create with them. And it's funny because I used to have a flurry of answers that I would actually change the members of, when people would say, if you could put the living or dead, if you could put together the perfect band that you like to record and do something with, what would it be? And through the different years, I've come up with different names, and they've changed and shifted based on where I was at in my life. And now I only answer that question with, yes, if I could dream of my dream band, if I could pull all these members together to make an album with, it would be Mike Portnoy, Billy Sheehan, Bumblefoot, and Derek Sherinian.
Yeah, there you go.
Enough said.
Yeah, enough said. Well, and we'll all look forward to you guys getting on the road and more albums. I know that particular project for all you guys is really meaningful. It's not a side thing. Yeah. It's an important staple in your career. All right, man. Well, look, I'm going to play the outro. If you'll stick on for 1 second so I can say a personal goodbye, we'll leave you to your boxes.
All right, Peter.
All right. Take care, man.
Thanks for your time, brother.
Hang tight a second.